Welcome, everyone, to episode 83 of the Gully Blanchard podcast. My name is Ryan, coming to you from the continent of California. This is live and direct, recorded on a Monday. All podcasts are available at gullyblanchard.podbean.com, or you can check us out on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, pretty much wherever you get podcasts by searching Gully Blanchard. Subscribe, rate, review. Been in a pretty good space the past couple of weeks. I've been putting in a lot of different podcasts, talking to a lot of interesting people. So there will be no shortage of Gully Blanchard content from a podcast standpoint for you to check out this week and moving forward. You can also check out all 83 episodes of the podcast and the wrestling writing that I do at nocoastbias.com. Shout out to Derek. And then also you can check out some of the information I do when I write about the Sacramento Kings at A Royal Pain. Shout out to Rafe and Jonathan for holding that side down through Fansided. So I think that's it's a really good place if you want to check out a lot of up-and-coming Sacramento Kings writers. They do a lot of good work over there for a team that is not so good. They make it fun. They make it interesting. So definitely give those guys a look when you get a chance. This originally used to be a one-person podcast. Brought some of my friends in with me for a little while. It was a lot of fun, but as people know, when you get in your mid-30s, sometimes life gets in the way. So I went back to doing a one-person podcast where I just really talk to people that I find interesting about topics that I find interesting. It could range from anything from, the Toronto Raptors to wrestling to a lot of different topics. It's usually pretty NFL, NBA, sports, and wrestling heavy. Those are the things I'm most passionate about. This episode is going to be no exception. We'll be talking to a good dude on Twitter, good follow, the guy I've been following for quite a while. He does a lot of cool stuff with Wrestle Rap. But without further ado, Dan, man, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, it was good, man.
Man, welcome in. So I know you do a lot of work with Wrestle Rap, but for those who don't know, how would you describe Wrestle Rap to someone who isn't familiar with it or is just hearing about it for the first time?
Man, how would I describe it? It's like the perfect combination of both worlds. It's like like they say, Ric Flair meets the Wu-Tang.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically just bringing together, because wrestling is this huge world, right? I would say Wrestle Rap is the voice of the people that don't always have the voice. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's been like, everyone watched it growing up. It's wrestling references have been huge in the rap community forever. So, and a lot of times that voice isn't really heard. So that's what we try to do. We try to speak up for the people that never get heard.
Yeah, I think, with how wrestling has been for as long as I've been a fan, I've been a fan for going on 30 years, it always felt like wrestling and hip-hop or rap music didn't necessarily go together. It always felt like there was a lot of, the way the WWE portrayed, there was a lot of, mainstream rock and roll, whether that be AC/DC, Megadeth, Metallica. Like, if you listen to a lot of their promo stuff that they do for like video packages or theme songs for pay-per-views, they always generally seem to be either mainstream music heavy, or they tend to lean towards more of like a rock and roll, which isn't bad in some spurts. But I think what you guys do over there with Wrestle Rap, one of the things that attracted me to it, it was something that was a voice for two things that I'm most passionate about. And it is just like you said, it's Ric Flair meets the Wu-Tang. And those are two things that I've both grew up being huge fans of. And to find things online where those two things can be a blend, where you can, read about the newest wrestling information and also get it from like a hip hop, get like hip hop music interjected into it somewhere, makes it really interesting and makes it something that you always want to go back and see how they're going to talk about the newest New Japan show or how they're going to blend in WrestleMania to hip hop references. So I think you guys do a really good job over there.
Well, as the man that runs the Twitter, I appreciate that. Amelia does a great job with the podcast. He admittedly will tell you that I am the Twitter guy. Like 98% of the time, you see it on there, it's me. We try to Yeah, man, we just try to keep it. We don't. I don't want to say it. We don't underestimate or take for granted um the position that we hold. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know that people do count on us to keep it. You know, I don't even know how I want to say it. But basically, we know where we stand, and we know who we represent, and we never want to not represent them well. You know what I'm saying? So we just we live in a weird space now where Ric Flair is in Migos videos, and um, there's like this supreme harmony between the two now that used to never get recognized. And I hope that the WWE soon realizes that they don't have to use Flo Rida, because you have my man Wale, you got all these guys out here who are making really good records and are really huge fans of wrestling and are always friends with the wrestlers, always at the shows. So hopefully they can transition away from those safer, poppier choices of the Flow Ridas and start to dive deeper into the rap community, because I think they'll find a lot of people willing to work with them that are, in my opinion, far more talented.
I agree, and I think one of the first times I really knew that this thing was taking off, what you guys did was the Smoke Dizza ringside stuff. Like he was rapping over WWE themes or WCW themes, and I thought it was one of the more creative things that you could do, man. Because like I know for me, I actually like some of the WWE themes, like for workout music or just stuff like like around the house. Like some of those themes can be really good. Like the Bray Wyatt one's one that rings a bell. Like I've had the Shinsuke Nakamura theme as my ringtone ever since debuted in NXT. So, to have rappers that'll come through and they'll put together like they'll lay down tracks over WCW or WWF or even ECW theme music. Like that to me is really creative and innovative, and it ties back to what you're saying. And even now, like I think that some of the people that are making those decisions as far as what's popular and what's trending, like, for example, Wale or Migos or even Dizza or even, what Emilio's doing with the podcast over there, those are people that are growing up as wrestling fans and are finally having the creative freedom to be able to do the stuff that they like as opposed to doing stuff that people want them to do. And I think it shines through with you seeing Wale, on Monday Night Raw, or I'm sorry, on SmackDown, with T Call and a couple of other guys out there. So just to see him out there doing that kind of stuff is really fun. It's really creative, and it's satisfying to kind of see that, as hip hop fans, we're finally starting to be accepted in the mainstream WWE culture slowly but surely.
Absolutely. I would 100% agree. I'm hoping that eventually, like, these rappers will get to do some of the wrestlers' themes. Like, like little known facts, like Nicki Minaj did like one of the early joints, like, like stuff like that. But like, Mark Henry had 3-6.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be really cool to see like, Wale do like somebody's entrance music, or like officially, you know what I'm saying? Like like that they use all the time. But speaking of the whole rap wrestling theme, do you follow that dude on Twitter, the Wrestle and Flow dude?
I do not, but I do not. But if I need to, I will. Who is it?
Yeah, he's I don't know his name, so I'm not gonna like butcher it. But it's literally Wrestle and Flow spelled like normally. It's the handle, and he takes all these theme songs and he raps over the beat, and he's getting a lot of love. For like wrestlers are loving it. He's a really really talented guy. Like he's done like Marty Skrull. He did the God theme, which is one of my favorite. The Gorillas of Destiny, like that beat, like the theme is one of my favorite. And I was like, man, I really need somebody to rap over this shit. And then like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cuss. I didn't know if we could cuss.
Yeah, you can cuss on here. You're good. Don't worry about it.
But like, yeah, dude, he's fairly new, but yeah, he's got some talent, and the stuff he's done with the way he's done themes has been incredible. And he shoots videos for every one of them, so it's pretty cool. He's got something nice going on over there, and I appreciate it.
Man, I'm definitely gonna have to check that out because it is something like I remember as a kid, and I grew up as a fan, I think like most of us did, of the Attitude Era. And, my first memories were like WrestleMania 4 and 5 on VHS. But even with the Attitude Era, like I remember when The Rock and Method Man, like WWF did like a hip hop theme compilation album. I want to say it's like
Aggression.
Aggression. Yeah, I was either going to call it Aggression or Ruthless Aggression. It was escaping me. But yeah, like I remember like Run DMC did the DX one, but the Rock's one that he did with Method Man was one of the ones that always stood out to me. And I remember as a kid, like being a hip hop fan, being like, oh, cool. Like we're finally starting to get some of the MCs that I listen to doing these hip hop songs. And it was really cool. And it wasn't something I think they followed up on. But like you said, like having 3-6 doing, Mark Henry's theme and stuff like that was a big thing. And now you have a lot of these rappers that grew up as fans and have the ability, like that Wrestling Flow guy that I got to check out, who just to do, to rap over stuff like the Bray Wyatt theme song, or to rap over stuff like, I want to check out that Marty Scurll one because I actually like his theme on its own, and just have guys like Dizza rapping over stuff like that. It's really cool, and it's really interesting to see how far that's came.
Yeah, Dizza is a really, really big supporter of what we do. So is Wale. So the Flatbush Zombies, who if you've never checked them out, you should check them out.
Yeah, I have actually came into them through your guys' website and through Big E tweeting a link to them out. I hadn't heard of them before Wrestle Rap and Big E.
Big E's a huge supporter. All the New Day in itself actually is it's really cool to get those interactions sometime that you wouldn't normally. I mean, we're just at the end of the day we're fans too,
Yeah.
So like to be able to like get support from these people that stuff we don't ask for, they just do it. Like Shane Strickland's another one. He's up and comer, like dude on the indie scene that's been putting in work, and he's a big supporter of ours. And it's just cool. Like some of our favorite people, anyway, actually like fuck with us. So like that's always rewarding at the end of the day, and it makes it so much more fun, and it never like seems like work. Like when we did like, for example, the G1 tournament, which people that don't know for New Japan, it's like this month-long multi-day thing, like big tournament to basically decide who's going to be like, it's like if you took the King of the Ring tournament and made it a month long and like a round robin sort of deal with points. Like I covered every day of that thing, and I was tired at the end of it, but it felt like it didn't feel like, man, I gotta wake up tomorrow and watch wrestling. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it felt like
so
something
it's just
fun.
cool. Yeah, it's fun. It's a fun thing to do, and I hope it keeps growing, and I hope people keep rocking with what we're doing.
Yeah. Now, how did you first get into pro wrestling? Because anytime I talk to someone on here on the podcast, I always find it interesting how they first found pro wrestling. Because some people found it through WWE, some people found it through WCW, NWA days, some people found it through ECW. So, what were some of your first memories of being a pro wrestling fan?
First, Macho Man Randy Savage.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, my dad used to pick me up on weekends, and he was like really big into like lifting in the gym. So like he would put me in front of the television and turn wrestling on, and he would go do his thing because I would stay entertained for like the whole hour to 2 hours that it was on, and just fell in love as a little kid with like how the Macho Man character. Hogan sorta, not so much. Definitely not now.
Definitely not now.
Yeah, he fuck him. But and then like, so the Macho Man was what initially got me interested, and just like these larger than life characters and all this craziness. And then as I started to watch, I became a huge Shawn Michaels fan. And Shawn's my guy. He's my favorite wrestler ever. Um, and it just started. I don't. It just became an obsession, man. I just loved it from like a creative standpoint to like, you know, obviously like the moves and everything were really cool. So it was just, I don't know. I've always been like a fan of like movies and music and all the entertainment stuff, and wrestling is like all of that. You get your acting, you get your action, you get the music stuff. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, yeah, I've been obsessed since I was like 4 or 5 years old.
Man, you know, I'm the same way. Like I grew up watching the old WCW Saturday nights. It would come on at 3:05 out here. And then like I remember watching Superstars on the weekends. The big Saturday nights main events. Like I remember I'd stay up late to watch those on NBC, and like the characters and the graphics and like they seemed really 1980s at the time. But you know, when you had like your first like the demolition graphics that would come up on the TV would always really grab me because they were so different and so fresh. And then, you know, even as a kid, it's even stuck with me with guys like Brett and Sean and, you know, Owen, Austin, all those guys that I grew up as a teenager building up this emotional equity with being fans of. And then just to stay with it now, it's always been something that stayed with me no matter how rough, you know, current WWE product may have been or how rough it was, you know, 10 years ago. But even as a kid, like I remember watching every Monday Night Raw, every Monday Night show that I could. I remember watching them all.
Yeah, I remember. I was always more of a. I watched both pay-per-views, but as far as weekly programming, I would watch Nitro from like 8 to 9,
Mm-hmm.
and then I would switch to Raw, and then during commercials I would switch back and forth, and then Raw would go off like promptly at like 11, and now they're infamous for the like runoff, you know, like the eight
Yeah.
minute runoff, and then I would switch it over to WCW just in time to see the very end of their show.
And I remember one thing that WCW did really well is like sometimes they wouldn't end the program right away and it would kind of lead into that next show. Sometimes it was like Thunder in Paradise, but I remember one, it was like Hulk Hogan against the Giant, and they would still be showing Thunder in Paradise after, but they would show clips of what happened on Nitro, like in the commercial. So you would stay with whatever was on. I think Nitro was one of the first shows that really would do the run out. They would do that run over, or they would start like a couple minutes early and stuff like that. It would really hook you as a young fan.
Yeah, and like when they were doing the whole like DDP, Jay Leno or like Carl Malone and Dennis Rodman, like you look back on it now and people would be like, yeah, that was trash. But I'm like, nah, B, it was not trash at the time when you're like 10 years old and you watch these dudes all the time and you're like big news that Carl Malone from the NBA is going to wrestle at like Hog Wild or wherever it was. And
I think it was like Road Wild Hog. It was whatever
okay.
one they did the bikes with.
Yeah, Hog Wild.
Yeah.
But man, like I don't know.
Yeah, it was definitely something that Nitro was a lot more creative at the time because they would do a lot of the stuff with guys as you know the wrestlers' real names or the way they would portray wrestlers that were coming into coming into the company for the first time. They would do stuff with X-Pac, or they would do stuff with Hall and Nash, obviously with that infamous Outsiders angle. They really had a good way of making it seem a lot more real than I think WWF was doing at the time.
And I was a huge fan of all the cruiserweight stuff because the cruiserweights used to have like the craziest matches, man. Like when you're like 10 years old, like I mean, they were doing stuff you'd never see in your life, and it was like the coolest thing like you'd ever seen. And then on the flip side, you had WWF at the time, and the Attitude Era was coming in, and you had like I remember watching like Sable with the handprint bikini.
Yeah, I think that was like
And
a
like
fully
I was
loaded or
young,
something.
I was probably like 10 or 11, and you just didn't see that shit on TV or like pay per view. Like obviously it was like fueled by like I was like a growing kid, like a young
Yeah,
boy. So like
we were learning.
obviously I loved it, but now at my age, I honestly prefer like the way women's wrestling is treated now because they're so good.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole and the Attitude Era, like it didn't age well as far as like the way they treated the women and stuff. Like now it's like kind of garbage, but yeah, it was just stuff like you weren't ever seeing on like regular cable television that was going down on cable television at primetime slots.
Yeah, I think Sunny was another one for me that, as a kid, I never really saw anyone doing some of the stuff that like they would have those clips of Sunny like after WWF Mania or WWF Raw where like she'd be in like some lingerie and it would always seemingly lead into like that first episode of Silk Stockings. But Sunny was another one, man. Like I remember as a kid thinking like, oh man, I think finally we're gonna get a chance to see what's all underneath that. And then they would always be able to pull that tease and then they'd go right into Silk Stockings, which would be another one where that first 10 minutes of Silk Stockings is legendary to me, man. That's the show that never should come back on USA, but man, it's something about that show as a kid was everything to me when Raw ended.
Oh man, that's funny.
Yeah, but I you know what, I agree though with the Attitude Era. Like I don't think a lot of that stuff ages really well. Like I think we romanticize a lot about the Austins and the Rocks and the Triple H's as we should, because those were some of the greats. Like they did have a really good talent roster, but I think from an in-ring standpoint, the way that the matches are being portrayed and the way that the women's wrestling is being portrayed is a lot better. I just think that the characters aren't as defined and as consistent as they used to be. It's a difficult time where back then everyone had a story. Every story had a conclusion, a beginning, a middle, and a conclusion. Whereas now they're just throwing stuff out there week after week, but they're having great matches on a weekly basis.
Yeah, they definitely traded the story for athletic ability. And that was always when the WWE had like really good stories, people would be like, but the wrestling sucks. And now that it's just like great wrestling, everyone's like, the story sucks. So it's kind of like, what would you rather have? I feel like the wrestling, I don't know. I have no complaints about the wrestling at all. I mean, especially since there's like so much available out there. Like you don't have to complain about what you're forcing yourself to watch because it's your choice. Like you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So like, back then you had two options, and then you had ECW come along, so you had a third. But now there's so many options and so many ways to watch it that, like, what's the point in constantly trashing something that you really don't have to watch?
Yeah, I think that's one of the really cool things about 2018, like the wrestling landscape of that, is if whatever type of wrestling you're a fan of, you can find. Whether that be like if you want hard hitting stuff, you can always watch like Progress or watch New Japan. If you want more of like a luchador style, you can always go to CMLL or AAA. Or if you want like a old traditional 1 hour wrestling show, you can watch NXT, or you can watch, sometimes when Impact was hitting, you can watch that too. So I think now more than ever, we have more options as a pro wrestling fan than I think we ever had. And not only that, I think we have more access to those options where, like you said, as a kid, like it was really two choices. It was WWF and WCW, or if you got lucky, like if your cable provider had ECW, or if you wanted to buy the ECW tape off of like High Spots or something, you could do it that way. But now at the time, like you can literally you can tell someone you're a huge pro wrestling fan and not watch the WWE product if it just doesn't interest you. You can stream New Japan World, or you can check out what's going on in Progress or Evolve or all these other companies. I think it's one of the healthier times for pro wrestling in a long time.
Well, they even have Powerbomb TV now, which has like a ton of indie promotions on it, and you just pay it. It's like a streaming service, and you can watch like. And High Spots, they have their own streaming service too. So, I mean, you can watch, like, whatever. Like, there's so many options. Like, I should never hop on Twitter and see the shit I see. But, we may even have all-women promotions if you just want to watch women's wrestling.
Mm-hmm. They have Shimmer and, Shimmer's the one in New Japan, if I'm not Stardom's the one in New Japan. I'm sorry. Stardom's the one in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they have all these different options for pretty much whoever you want to be a fan of. And I think it does make for a better overall product. Just because, the more options you have to find something you like, I think it always works out the better.
I would have to 100% agree with you.
So I know I'm going to transition off wrestling here for a little bit. I know by following you that you are a big Cubs fan. I can relate in some aspects because I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan. Finally, after decades of frustration. Our teams won their title, man. But put me there. How was it watching games? How was it watching the Cubs win the World Series? Like, where were you? What were you doing? How did it feel?
So there's this. I live in Northern Virginia, and there's this popular, like, it's not necessarily a chain. It's more of just like a franchise. Well, there's like 14 of them, but they're all different. It's a place called Clyde's. It's like a fairly upscale, like bar restaurant type deal, but they always have, like, each one has their own unique thing. But you don't have to be upscale to go there. Like it's just super popular. I don't know what I could compare it to. It's kind of like, but I'm like a regular. I go there all the time because the bar scene is really, really cool. And they have this. The one I go to is particularly big, and it has like 5 different bars in it. Well, there's a separate building out back on the property. It's called the Richmond Bar, which it's an old schoolhouse they brought up from Richmond, Virginia, to make it like their like cigar bar, which is where a lot of the regulars, super regulars, hang out. So you can go in there and you can get your drinks and you can have a cigar or something if you want to. But I was back there watching Game 7 because there weren't that many people and I could just focus on the game while also drinking because there's no way my nerves could handle this one without. But I actually ended up being interesting is it's the same bar that Jay Gruden, who coaches the Redskins, hangs out.
Mm-hmm.
And he happened to be there that night. So I watched Game 7 with him. And he ended up buying my stuff, which was great. So thanks, Jay. But yeah, I was just at this bar watching the man. I still remember it. It's probably the only time people have ever like seen me shed tears in public because it was kind of like the biggest sports burden I've ever had in my life that I've carried for years at the time, like 29, 30 years. And it just like lifted off of me. And it was so surreal because it was like, did this really happen? It was like for several days afterwards, I was like, had to remind myself that yes, the Cubs won the World Series because you just like always hoped it would happen. But as time goes on, you started to question if it ever really would. And it was like, even on that last out, it's super interesting because Chris Bryant slipped when he was throwing the ball, so it went a little high. And I was like, oh man, that would have been the most Cubs thing ever if it would have went over Rizzo's head and it wasn't the end of the game. Because after that freaking tie, when Rajay Davis hit that homer off Chapman, I was like, man, because we had a comfortable lead pretty much the whole game and we gave it up. Because it was like 6-1 at one point, I believe. And I was ready to coast in to Titletown. And all of a sudden, it's a tie game in the bottom of the ninth. And then that rain delay, I think, is what saved it because it allowed them to collect themselves from their reeling. And then, yeah, Ben Zobrist hit that ball, scored just 2 runs. And then Will Montgomery, or not Will, I'm sorry, he's a football player. Mike Montgomery came in and got his first ever save to win the World Series for the Chicago Cubs.
Yeah, man. It's funny you say it that way because with the exception of being at a bar, that's pretty much line for line how I experienced the Super Bowl too, man. Because like I remember when Wentz when he tore his ACL, I was like, all right, cool, like they got me again. It's over. Like all this greatness that we had, and Wentz tearing his ACL, they're gonna bring in Nick Foles. Foles hadn't looked good in a long time. I was like, it's kind of over. Like, whatever, it'll be fun. And then it was like the first playoff game where they played the Falcons. And then, Matt Ryan overthrew Julio Jones. So I was like, all right, cool. Like, we're going to play the Vikings. And I was like, I think they could beat the Vikings. And they ended up doing that. And then it got to the Super Bowl, and my nerves didn't really kick in until about an hour before the game. And that whole game, like, I couldn't sit down. I was just funneling in. I was like mainlining like Cheez-Its and Jack Daniels just to calm my nerves. That was all that I had in me the whole game. Like my fiance is making like cheesesteaks and all these other really cool appetizers. And I'm just like, just keep just keep the cheeses and keep the Jack Daniels coming because, man, I couldn't sit down. And then, like, we had started the game with the lead. Like, we went into half of, like, a 10 or 12-point lead. And I'm like, all right, cool. We should be good. And then, like, Brady brought him back because, you know, Tom Brady goes Tom Brady. And I was like, this sucks. Like, it's bound to happen this way. Like, those bastards got me again. And then Foles threw the touchdown to Ertz. And I was like, oh, that's a lot. Like, the whole time I'm not thinking, like, oh, my God, they're going to win. I'm thinking, like, oh, man, that's a lot of time left on the clock. And then they got the fumble and they kicked the field goal. And I'm still thinking in my head, like, oh, man, Brady. Like, I'm thinking, like, they got to throw a Hail Mary. And then they got to get the 2-point conversion. And then Brady throws the Hail Mary, and I'm like, I swear to you, that ball felt like it was in the air forever. And then the ball hit the ground. And what's weird is, like, I always expected to have, like, that movie moment where it's like, oh, like, you watch it and they do the kneel down and everything's great and dramatic. To this day, like, I don't remember seeing the Hail Mary hit the ground. I was like, okay, is it over? Is it over? Whoa, it's over. Like, we just won the Super Bowl. And it for like days, all I could say out loud was like, we're the champs. We're the champs. Like, it took, for some reason, it was the same thing. Like, it took me a while to sort of accept the fact that, like, my favorite football team, the cause of all this anguish for all these decades, are finally the champions of the world. And yeah, man, it's a great feeling.
Yeah, plus I felt so bad for Carson Wentz because, like, he's the reason. You know, like, he's the guy, and he didn't get to win the title for Philly. And even if he eventually does, which he probably could because he's awesome, like, he won't be the guy to deliver the first one. You know what I'm saying? And he just had to sit there and watch it happen.
And that's got to be tough, too, like, as a competitor. Like, every pass, you're like, oh, I wish what could I do what could I have done to make that incompletion complete or something like that? Like, that's got to be a really emotional time on that sideline where you're watching the lead and then you're watching the lead slip away and then you're watching the lead again. And, like, yeah, as a sideline guy, I could just imagine being a fan, someone who's never played, you know, organized football past high school. Like, I could just imagine as, like, a player who couldn't contribute, that's got to be torture just to watch that team that you're a huge piece of the puzzle to, and not being able to be out on the field to support them.
Yeah, bro. Like, I rode that high for a long. Like, I was like, the Cubs are going on a bender, so am I.
Yep.
And, like, for months, after I was just hammered, and I'd be like, at the store, like, little things, like my total, they'd be like, your total's 1908, and I'd be like, not anymore.
I know.
Like, man, it was the craziest thing ever. Like, and I know it'll happen again, but it won't ever feel like that first one.
Yeah, that's kind of where I come at too. Like, if they get another one, cool. Like, you know, you get one, you always gonna want the other. But, like, it's weird this year that no matter what happens, no matter what they do, like right now they're 2-3 after blowing a couple rough ones to Tennessee and Minnesota, and I'm not as bothered as I would have been like 2 years ago. So I'm like, man, excuse me. I was like, I got to see them win a ring. No matter what happens, like, I got to see them get that ring that I always wanted them to have. And, like, nothing can ever take that away.
That's exactly how I feel.
So I know we talked about this before we got on, man, but I didn't know this until just now. You're a huge Shameless fan, just like me.
Yeah, it's a great show.
How did you find that show? Because for me, I found it about 3 seasons in. So, like, my last year living in Vegas, I had to binge the whole show, and I got caught up, and now I'm caught up on everything. But I really love this season, what they're doing with Lip and Fiona, and kind of teasing the Fiona's going a different direction. What are your thoughts on the first couple episodes?
Yeah, this Lip storyline, like his whole, like, story arc of the season has been very interesting because it's kind of like he's kind of assumed this father role, right, of this little girl that was just left to him, and he's very familiar with just being left to fend for himself. You know what I'm saying? Because Frank is an asshole, and, you know, he's like, but you gotta love it. You love Frank, but Frank would be. I would hate him if he was my father. You know, like,
oh yeah. I
mean, he is definitely not a father.
No.
And yeah, you had Fiona pretty much taking care, like, her and Lip were the oldest kids, so they were pretty much just, like, taking care of everybody their whole life. So, like, he wasn't, like, naturally he couldn't just like let this little girl um stay by the wayside, and then all of a sudden her mom comes back out of nowhere and she's like sucking dick all over the South Side for money, and like he's like, I'm not giving this kid back, right? But then the kid followed him and saw her mom, and now like he doesn't have her, so it'll be interesting to see how he deals with it. And I feel like him nearly killing himself on motorcycles is going to be like his new addiction, like
Yeah,
his new
I I,
thrill.
I
Now that he
thought
doesn't drink.
I got that too. That was something that I found. Once he didn't have Xan in his life anymore. At this episode, I felt like he was definitely searching for a new addiction, a new alternate addiction. I just wonder because it was evident when he went into that liquor store and bought like 5 different packs of cigarettes and stuff like that. So I'm just wondering how that and the motorcycle is going to play into the other episodes because that guy that came into his motorcycle shop to get the bike fixed ended up being the guy that brought him to that motorcycle race, and you could kind of see the adrenaline and see that he was ahead of that guy on the race. So it might be something to where instead of going out drinking, he's definitely going to start turning to motorcycle riding as a way to sort of curb whatever addiction or whatever thrill that he needs as an addict.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they write off Fiona because she's done.
Yeah, this is her last season. That's one that's difficult for me because I think she's to me, I don't know how they're going to do Shameless without Fiona. Like she's so tied into everything that's going on with the show, and I hope it's not a situation where the show jumps the shark, especially where Fiona ties into what Lip goes through and what Carl goes through, and all these different things still seem to revolve around Fiona, especially with Ian too, with everything that just went on that last episode. So I'm interested to see if it's something that how they write her off, because I feel like she's such a pivotal. In wrestling terms, I feel like she's a main event talent, and I'm interested to see how they write her.
Definitely a main event talent.
Yeah, like I want to see how they move that around for the next season.
I think that she's just gonna end up leaving the city.
Like her and Ford are gonna go somewhere and just get out of Chicago for good.
Yeah, I think like she's gonna see some real estate like opportunities somewhere or something, and they're gonna bounce because the writers and the directors, they already said like she has the open door, like she can come back whenever she wants to come back. So like I don't think they're gonna like kill her off. So, but yeah, I don't know how the show's gonna do without her because she like Emmy Rossum is like, I mean, she's most of the reason that a lot of people watch the show.
Myself included.
Yeah, like Lip was like Carl actually. Dude, Carl's so funny. I love Carl. He always goes through the wildest shit. But
yeah, he always puts himself in some really funny situations. Even like what he did last week with what happened with that girl at the when he was trying to get into West Point. Like that was a whole interesting little scenario in itself.
I agree.
One thing I like that Shameless does is they find a way to take serious social issues, and I don't want to say make them funny, but they make them relatable. Like the scene where they were at the bar and V and the other girl were talking about how many times like they had been assaulted and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then the 2 guys that are always at the bar, their names are escaping me, had said something, and then V was like, "Yeah, imagine having to actually go through it." And that really ties into like what's going on nowadays in society. But they do a really good job of taking those serious topics and making them something where it's like, oh, okay, like it's not so serious where I can't understand it, and it's something to where I can relate to it on an everyday basis.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of just like being on Twitter and like knowing like all these different people now and like all these different walks of life and different people's stories is kind of like it makes especially me like as a person like more aware of things and like things that maybe I would have found funny years ago I don't find funny anymore, and like certain words like I might like use like more loosely, like for example, like like sometimes like in sports or whatever, like they'd be like, get off of him, he's raping him, like what I'm saying, like I would never like that word is so serious to me now. Like after meeting victims of said act, like I would never like it just doesn't. I'm more consciously aware of things like how things are said around, like who says things around me, and like things that I say because like it's different. Like when it's in front of your face, you know, it really makes you like uh conscious of basically like not saying insensitive things, even if you don't view, you know, like how do I want to say it? It's basically like now the knowledge that I have now makes me like you say, like you go back and watch American Pie and you see Stifler's character. Stifler's character would never make it in 2018 because like that character is so like juvenile and the jokes are so like almost like atrocious in a way like that. They couldn't make that movie now because the character just wouldn't like it's too much. You know what I'm saying? Like it's kind of like you thought it was hilarious then, right? But and some of the childish shit is still hilarious, but like the misogyny and all that stuff would never fly.
Yeah,
And that's
that's
good because I feel like women have been ignored forever. And I'm sorry, I just took your whole podcast on a serious turn
oh
here.
no, you're good with it.
But like I feel like I'm glad that they're getting an ear now, and it's
Yes.
not where it needs to be, but I feel like hopefully we can get there. The Kavanaugh confirmation, I'm not a big political person, but I think that dude's an asshole. And he, if you sexually assault someone, then you deserve terrible things to happen to you. But I feel like that set us back a little bit because it's like we're not. But I do feel like the Me Too movement and women, because women are the future. Like it's not a like they've been oppressed for so long of all like black, white, Asian doesn't matter. Like women like are have been treated like secondary to like their needs have never been important, and now they're starting to be important, and they're starting to be heard, and their power be recognized, and the respect levels are going up. So hopefully, we continue to move in that direction because I mean I know a lot of badass women that deserve a lot of badass things, and I hope that that's what our future holds. But
No, yeah, I absolutely agree. I think one thing about that whole movement, and especially tying this back to wrestling too, like there's a lot of stuff that I've been binge watching a lot of old Monday Night Raws from the early 2000s, and even just hearing like some of the Jerry Lawler commentary, like
oh man,
some of the stuff he would say about the women's wrestlers. It's like I get that might have been funny and might have had its place at its time, but even hearing that stuff back now in 2018, it just like God, like that stuff never could fly now, and nor should it fly now. Like I'm glad that we're not in a space to where that sort of commentary or that sort of depiction of of women or of really anyone is accepted now. It's something that I think as kids, and I can say this as someone in my mid-30s, there were a lot of words that I think we used not understanding the strength of those words. I just think there were words that we might have just been taught by osmosis. So I think now more than ever, you're having people that are more conscious of the fact that the words that come out of their mouth can be hurtful and can have an impact. And I think if nothing else, I'm hopeful that the generations behind us are going to look at certain words that we thought were okay and realize how not okay that they would have been, even as like a lighthearted joke or something like that.
absolutely. Like the women, they used to tell us they were sexy because they did the mud wrestling and
Mm-hmm.
the jello and the bikini contest, and now the women are sexy because they're badass athletes. You know what I'm saying? And that's the way it should have always been, but it wasn't. And hopefully now is a good starting point,
Mm-hmm.
and they build off of it in the future to
Yeah,
where
I
that
agree.
sort of thing isn't like normal or like people aren't like, man, I wish they'd go back to because they should never go back to it.
No, I don't want to see that stuff. I don't want to see. And what I'm hopeful for is like I think there's going to be a generation of younger people watching, pro wrestling and being like, well, I never remember a time where women wrestled in like bra and panties. Like I remember Sasha Banks and Bayley having the best match on the card. And I think you're going to have people that are like 9, 10, 11 years old watching wrestling now, and they don't know of a mud wrestling type era. And to them, it's just 100% normal to see like Alexa Bliss against Nia Jax being just a straight traditional wrestling match. And if we can get to a place to where that's a reflection of society, I think we're going to be in a lot better of a way.
Absolutely.
So, I want to send this one home on a high note because I think we've had a really good conversation here today, man. But where can people follow you on Twitter? Where can people follow Wrestle Rap? I want to give you the floor to kind of promote everything that you do online.
You can follow me on Twitter at Dan Pultz, Pultz, MGMT. On Instagram at Daniel Pultz. Again, Pultz is spelled Pultz. You can find me on Wrestle Rap at Wrestle Rap, WRASSLERAP. And I also have a merch shop that I opened with Whatamaneuver at whatamaneuver.net/collections/the fresh mint. So go, I got 2 shirts up. Cop one, cop both. Help me pay my gym membership so I can get abs like Finn Balor.
Man, the man's dreamy. I gotta call it what it is. That's a dreamy dude, man. Like I can't. I'm good enough with my masculinity to say it. Like I see that dude, I just look. I'm like, man, that's a dreamy man right there. Him and Kathy Kelly, man, more power to him.
Right? Are they a thing?
Yeah. My man Ben Coyle has been heartbroken about this forever, man. They are very much a thing.
Yeah, she was definitely Ben Stees, man. That was his girl.
Yeah, man. So you can check out all 83 episodes of the Gully Blanchard podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you want to check us out. We're there. Search Gully Blanchard, GULLYBLANCHARD. And also check out the pod at nocoastbias.com. All episodes and also my wrestling writing is available on that website. You can also check out the writing I do about the Sacramento Kings at a Royal Pain, which is through Fansided. Lastly, you can follow me on Twitter at Gully Blanchard, which is GULLYBLANCHARD. Dan, thank you very much for making the time, man. I really appreciate this time. I know we both got a lot going on today. I know Monday Night Raw is coming on later, but man, thank you very much for the time and coming on the podcast.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it anytime.
No problem, man. So thank you very much, Bear, Caden, Marcus, Ricky. You guys made all this possible. Love you guys all very much. Until next week, we'll be back, and I will talk to you guys then.